Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of VEG Networking Canada, where plant-based vegan companies connect and collaborate. And before we begin, we're going to start with our land acknowledgement. It's important to honor, acknowledge, and respect that many of us are located on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territories of many Indigenous peoples of Canada. So here we are again, VEG Networking Canada, where we connect and collaborate with vegan plant-based professionals who have experience in many different industries. And today, our special guest has over 20 years experience in brand development, storytelling, and creating ultimate customer journeys. She has nearly 15 years as a proud advocate for environmental sustainability and animal rights, serving as an international NGO chair and co-founder, plus a founder of a sustainable footwear fashion brand. VEG Networking Canada is pleased to introduce partner at Cascadia Seaweed and the VP of Sales and Marketing for its consumer food brand, Cove. Welcome, Desiree Dupuis.
Hi, Justin. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm trying to remember how long I've been a member of this group, and it's been years pre-COVID when we used to meet in person.
Well, with all the new faces that everybody's meeting and connecting, which is the whole impetus of this great group of like-minded professionals, why don't you take us back to your personal story about where sort of the vegan life, the plant-based life started for you?
Yeah, you bet. I was, I guess, 27 years old. So I'm going to let everyone know how old I am. I'm 43, and I was 27 back in 2008. And it was just like a normal kind of everyday meat eater. I mean, I wouldn't say I was a big meat eater, but I grew up in a family where meat was always the center of the plate, and most meals were planned around meat. And I really didn't think anything about meat or animals. And I actually it's stuck in my brain because I have such like a transitional moment. So actually a coworker of mine, we were, doing like getting coffee and like whatever. And it was like, oh, are you gonna have milk? And she's like, no, I'm off milk right now. And I was like, oh, she's like, yeah, I read that there's like antibiotics and like all this like really horrible things in milk and dairy. And so this is back in 2008. And so I've always been very interested in nutrition and always felt like our body is our machine and like food is our fuel and we are what we eat. And so I was like, red flag, like, oh, okay. And she's like, yeah, I read this book called Skinny Bitch. And immediately, of course, I was like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. And so literally a few days later, I was heading on a trip to Hawaii with my best friend, very best friend, Kelly. And sure enough, in the airport at YVR, like right in front of me was Skinny Bitch. And so I picked up the book and I started reading it throughout like the journey on my trip to Maui. And Kelly is like the opposite. Like she's always like been a gymnast and like just like consumed meat and like everything that she could. And really didn't care. And so I'd read out excerpts of the book, like about aspartame and again, like chemicals. And she's like, I don't care. And then there's a chapter in the book all about slaughterhouses, and it's very graphic, and it just like shook me to the core. And it was the first time in my life that I had really made the connection between like a piece of chicken on my plate to this living, breathing, sentient being, and the whole process that this beautiful animal goes through to end up as like, the center of my plate. And my brain just switched. Like I was horrified. I stopped eating meat since that day in June 2008. And I told my friend Kelly, I was like, you have to read this. If you read this, you'll never eat meat again. And I literally went to have a shower. I came out, she was bawling her eyes out. And yeah, since then, both of us. So that book is written by two vegans. So both of us went vegan like right away in 2008. And because I was in financial services and always networking, and I don't want to make an excuse, but it was challenging to, be like vegan, especially with my family. And so I went through the whole process of like, we're coming to a point now, I think, where labels are like maybe starting to go by the wayside. But anyways, for the purposes of explaining, went through like the pescatarian and then vegetarian. And then really like for me, fish was also kind of like really hard to have the same feeling towards like salmon or tuna as I did towards like a pig or like a cow. But eventually I just also started to understand like the environmental impact of fishing and seafood. And so I really made the commitment to be fully vegan I don't know, somewhere in the middle there. But anyway, so it's been a whole journey, but I'm 100% fully committed vegan. I stopped wearing leather back in 2008 and all of that kind of stuff because I was just like horrified. I'm like, I don't want anything to do with animals being used for consumption or for human purposes. Like it just does not sit well with me, and has since become even more of a greater passion of mine.
Well, that's so cool to hear your unique story where it started for you in 2008. You know, there's no comparison of how many years somebody has or hasn't been sort of living this life, but at the same time, there's been so many changes over the course of a lot of changes over the last 5 or 10 years that you were sort of ahead of already. As it comes to business and entrepreneurship, we mentioned how you founded an international NGO where you're a chair and a co-founder. You founded a sustainable footwear fashion brand. You know what you're doing with Cascadia Seaweed and Cove and all of that. Can you tell us where you first had the entrepreneur bug or the spark to have that entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah, you bet. I think, well, I know that my number one value, if you ever read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you have to go through this process of like establishing your own personal values and your own mission statement. And so I know that my number one value is freedom. And I've always just been like really confident and really like knowing how I feel and what I want. And so knowing that my number one value is freedom, I think it was around the same time actually. So the last full-time job that I had was in 2008, essentially before I joined Cascadia, at that same company where that coworker was talking about not drinking milk. And I was working for a wine company, and I had started as like a marketing and events person. And then shortly after I was hired, that company lost the distribution rights to a large brand. And I saw so many people on the beer side of the company be let go. And my dad had also been let go after working like 30 years for a company. And my parents paid for my Bachelor of Commerce in international business and thought like job security and get a good job with benefits. And they're preaching this to me, even though my dad had been let go for the only job he worked for 30 years. And then I get this job with this company and supposedly have job security. Meanwhile, like in another division of the company, I see 30 people be let go. And so I figured like, actually, the most job security and the most amount of freedom I can have is if I work for myself and I create things for myself. And so kind of at that job, I realized like the, the wall and the ladder that I was climbing, the corporate ladder. And I saw the VP of sales and marketing, which is so funny because I'm like a VP of sales and marketing now. But like back then, the VP of sales and marketing for this company, she was at the office every day till 6 and 7 o'clock, had 2 young kids, was off to like, different places. And I just thought, you know what, if I ever have a family 10 years, 15 years from now, like I don't want to be in an office until 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And so, yeah, I just decided like, I don't know. And I started having pain in my jaw driving to work at that job. And I was like, I'm way too young to be suffering from health benefits or health like problems from stress. And yeah, I had that epiphany and I quit my job. And from there, that's when I started 360 Financial Group with the same vegan best friend, Kelly. And then it's just like following instincts and the path. And then that led to us like co-founding this Ruben Shoe Society, which is our international NGO that you talked about. And yeah, I think I'm just like, thankfully that I was raised in a really loving family. So I have a lot of confidence and I just really feel empowered that I can do whatever I want to do. And I also feel like with ideas and with these companies that I'm a part of and creating, it's like just starting somewhere. I don't think like Ruben Shoes, it was started because we knew that kids in the Dominican Republic couldn't go to school unless they had shoes. And so we were just like, well, we know people with kids that have shoes that they wear one time and throw them out. Why don't we take those shoes and give them to 100 kids and help them go to school? And then now we have 550 students in 2 schools, and we've sent 100,000 pairs of shoes around the world. So if I had known it was going to be that, I don't know if I had ever would have started, but it was like literally just like, we have some shoes, let's send them, to the Dominican. And then with VOES, my footwear company, as a vegan, and as I mentioned, I stopped wearing leather in 2008, and I'm a woman and I freaking love shoes, especially beautiful shoes. And it's just been so hard to find nice footwear that's not leather or suede. And then this whole thing about like environmental sustainability becoming more and more important to me. The alternative to, like for vegan footwear is polyurethane or like really harsh plastic chemicals. And so yeah, that's when I started VOES. I was like, well, there's no good footwear option, so I guess I'm just gonna have to make it myself. And then I found like cactus leather and started that company in 2016 or 17. It's been a long journey because it's been a long journey, but yeah, that's kind of like my story. And I just feel like I just take things upon myself. If I'm not happy or if I see a problem, I'll just do it.
So suffice to say, 2008 was super pivotal for you in terms of like your vegan plant-based origin story, your entrepreneur origin story, and very cool to hear how the laser focused value and freedom threads right through both of those stories. So thank you so much for sharing that. Our next question is our next question is, what are some trends that you're noticing in your industry? And for those who don't know, please do tell us a little bit more about Cascadia Seaweed and the most sustainable crop on the planet. And then maybe you can talk about trends from there.
Yeah. So with being an entrepreneur, in 2020, I was basically running the full-time charity Ruben Shoes. We had sold our financial services business to focus full-time on the charity. And obviously everything to do with fundraising and international travel came to like a screeching halt. And I was literally spending my days just like running, meditating and running. And all of a sudden I got a text one day that said, I have an opportunity for you. It aligns with all of your values. And it turned out that Cascadia Seaweed, which had been founded about a year earlier, had been starting to build seaweed farms all around Vancouver Island in partnership with coastal Indigenous First Nations, and realized quickly that the best value for the seaweed that they were growing would be a consumer food brand. And so that's when I was invited to join as a founding partner in the spring summer of 2020 to launch a food brand, which essentially has become Kove Ocean Foods. And at Cove, we're creating the tastiest, most delicious foods that we can, made from BC grown seaweed. And so in terms of trends in the industry, is definitely sustainability is on everybody's mind, because you can't go anywhere without noticing the impacts and thinking about climate change. And I think I look around the screen here and we're all about the same demographic, and really feeling the weight of the world as to like, how can we as individuals and consumers really like help move the needle, especially as vegans, like we are like mostly empathetic and like have been caring about the planet and animals for a very long time. And so absolutely, I think now people in mass are starting to make the connection between what's on their plate and how it impacts the world. And so I think you're starting to see a lot more, like sustainability in food, and whether or not it's true, it's definitely being used as like a marketing term, whether it's packaging or the ingredients. So obviously Justin mentioned, with seaweed, it is arguably the most, sustainable. We call it regenerative crop because it grows in the ocean, so we're not cutting down any trees. There's no deforestation. It grows in the ocean, so you don't have to water seaweed, so there's no demand on fresh water. And then because it's so nutrient dense, it's good for us to eat, but it also provides so many nutrients to ocean life. And so at our seaweed farms, we see thriving ecosystems. We see the salmon are coming, and the bears come, and the birds come, and these like we grow something called kelp, like sugar kelp. And so through planting of kelp, we're really like giving back to the environment, and then taking that and putting it into food. I'd say another trend we were talking about a little bit offline is gut health for sure, and functional foods. So we're seeing a lot more products come out that are more functional, or at least healthier, less sugar, monk fruit, or different things. And again, just like trying to focus on prebiotic or probiotic ingredients for gut health and things like that. So I think the sustainability and like the functional foods in terms of like gut health and things like that are big trends for sure that we're seeing in the consumer food industry.
So speaking of that, why don't you take us through a little bit of the journey? Because the next question is, where is Cove going in the future? So why don't you tee up sort of where the food brand has come to now, and then get everybody excited about what's the future plans.
Yeah, it's so exciting. So again, like when I joined 2 years ago, we had the idea to launch a food brand, and then now we have Cove, and it's all coming together right now. So about 6 months ago, we launched our very first product, which is our signature seaweed seasoning, sea spice. This is kind of like the everything bagel spice, but made with BC grown seaweed and nutritional yeast and garlic and onion and sesame seeds. It's great on avocado toast and rice bowls. And we've since launched a lemon version and a sriracha version. So now we have 3 flavors of our signature seaweed seasoning, and people are loving it, using it on everything. And then now, even more exciting, because we have consumable products, we just launched our protein puffs. So we have 4 flavors of our protein puffs, which are made really with just 2 ingredients in the base. So I talked about functional foods. So this is made with seaweed powder and pea protein. So pea protein, pea fiber, and pea starch in the base. And then we have 4 really tasty flavors, sharp cheddar, which I just showed you. We have one that's become a fan favorite, umami butter. And we also have a sweet barbecue and of course a signature flavor, kelp and vinegar. And so with the protein puffs, very low sugar. In 100 grams, you have 0 to 4 grams of sugar. And more importantly, because it's a protein puff, it's up to 18 grams of protein in a 100-gram bag, and really good source of iron and lots of other, nutritional elements. And then lastly, we just went into our first pre-production run of our Cove kelp tortilla chips. So this will be a corn and kelp tortilla chips, similar to what you're used to eating. But again, the benefits is that it's made with seaweed powder. So you're getting what we've coined a totally dippable chip, a chip that's not going to break in your hummus, or if you're eating salsa out of the jar out of the fridge like I do, your chip is not going to break into it. And of course, with our original tortilla chip at the classic kelp flavor, there's no added salt. So the seaweed is bringing the flavor and a bit of a more nutritional tortilla chip. So that's where we're at. It's like super live. Literally, the Cove Puffs are only available on shelf at Vegan Supply right now. They've been like such a strong supporter of ours, always featuring being the first to feature our products. And like I said, our pre-production run of our tortilla chips just happened yesterday. The chips, the dough is made, and then it has to like rest overnight. And then today is like the second day, like literally right now. And yeah, we were just at the Canadian Health Food Association show in Toronto last week, and have secured distribution with some really strong partners, the Neal brothers and John Luca. So yeah, it feels like a rocket ship. Like things are just about to like take off. And so far the consumer feedback has been really positive. The overwhelming feedback about our protein puffs is that you can really taste the seaweed or smell the seaweed when you open a bag. So you definitely want to, be someone that enjoys seaweed, and hopefully you can all try them soon.
Well, thanks a lot, Desiree. Now, no matter who's watching this or what time they're watching this, everybody's drooling, thinking about all those different amazing snacks and what you could do with them. So thank you so much. And the next question that we have, obviously you support charities, like you talked about the NGO and other things, but is there any plans for Cove or Cascadia to support charitable organizations? I know that it's sort of baked into the business model, so maybe you can touch a little bit more on that, because you talked about where your brand is going in the future. She's being very humble, folks. It's like coastal domination, because it does, the brand is built on the coastal indigenous peoples, and I think everybody up and down along the coast is really going to love these products. But anyways, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the charity connection with the brand?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would just rather talk like personally too with my charitable, like obviously, yeah, I'm a co-founder of Ruben Shoe Society. I am now back to a volunteer. I've been a volunteer most of the time that Ruben Shoes has been around for 10 years. And I currently am the chair of the board. And yeah, in terms of the brand, I mean, we're looking at, I think, environmental, different types of ocean sustainability types of like charitable organizations. I'm not going to name any right now, just because we're not officially tied to anybody and we're not actually giving any money right now. But I think more importantly, we are all about like economic opportunities, and with our Indigenous partners, we We work with them to help them actually enact the rights that they have to govern their own land and water under the Douglas Treaty. And so we have 6 different First Nations partners at the moment: the Sayout First Nation, the Seashot First Nation, the Awsat First Nation, the Uchuckwacit Tribe Government, and the Klahoos First Nation. And each one of them, with our seaweed farms, they have ownership of the farm and of a portion of the seaweed that we grow. Obviously, in the territories that we have the seaweed farm, when we are harvesting, we're employing local residents and providing a lot of employment opportunities and economic opportunities. And so I think that first and foremost, because the word charity, is starting to have a little bit of a negative connotation. I think people want to be empowered and lift up rather than just be given handouts. And so that's not to say that there's not organizations that are charities that need support, like us at Ruben Shoes, or places like Home for Hooves and things like that. But I think just from what I can speak to with what we're doing with Cove and Cascadia, that's kind of where we're focused right now. And then I do want to give her a shout out because I just love everything that Erin Ireland has done for our community and for animals and for just like a vegan lifestyle with To Live For, her new bakery. And so with Cove, we did make $1,000 donation to be a founding partner of whatever the badge was. And so really wanted to help support her getting that open and help with the financing in the last month to open that. And so I think if anyone hasn't checked it out, go to her Indiegogo campaign to open the To Live For bakery. And I think that we should all support her in getting to the finish line.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing about all of that information, especially the Douglas Treaty. That's very interesting, and how that helps empower those, previously marginalized and sort of left out folks. And that's incredible. And all the other tidbits as well. So the next question is we're going to try and pull some more tidbits from you. You've already mentioned Skinny Bitch and how that was such an interesting book. I guess why a lot of people love it so much, because it talks about chemicals and slaughterhouses. So very different. You talked about 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Feel free to touch on those or add more books, podcasts, or even mobile apps that you use on your phone in terms of recommendations for founders, or maybe a position that you were in too. You were sort of like an entrepreneur and then you switched to an entrepreneur. Any recommendations that you have for folks along those lines?
My favorite podcast, which I'm sure has been mentioned many of times on this, is How I Built This. I as an entrepreneur, I love the entrepreneur's journey. And on that podcast, you learn all about how Instagram became Instagram, or Angie's Boom Chicka Pop, like how they started in their whole journey, Peloton, like all these really big brands. And the overwhelming theme of all of those stories is that it's never like here to here, as we've seen that everyone's seen that entrepreneur graph, right? So I just love, because most of the times you get pushed to the brink. It's like most of them talk about having to like remortgage their house, or almost going bankrupt, or conflicts, being sued and losing partners and all this kind of stuff. And so for me, it's just because, again, I've gone through so many ups and downs in all the different businesses that I've been a part of. And so I just love hearing that, like the story of these founders and what they've been through. You mentioned the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I always read that. It's not the easiest read, I don't find, because it is more like, it was like the 4-hour work week, back in the day with Tim Ferriss. It's like encyclopedias where you're like referring back all the time. And so it's kind of like a Bible. Same with Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It's kind of like a Bible on like mindset and like how you can create the life that you want. I would share so 2 other podcasts. I love the Rich Roll podcast and Super Soul Sundays by Oprah. Oprah is just such an OG, and Super Soul is I just love that podcast. And then lastly, I'll share the most recent book that I listened to for the second time is called The Big Leap. And it really talks about how most of us have this like zone of excellence that we live in, which is like our comfort zone. And then as soon as you try to like jump out of your zone of excellence into your zone of genius, it kind of triggers this upper limit. And then you'll find like you'll like almost like self-sabotage in some area of your life, whether it be financial, relationship, career, health. And they give lots of different examples of people that have triggered their upper limit, and then some form of like sabotage comes through. So I am like taking that again as like a Bible to figure out how I can like really live in my zone of genius 24/7, 365, which is definitely not an easy thing to do, but working on it.
Those are excellent recommendations, and we could talk for a whole hour, we're all sure, on moving the interesting movement from, what was it, the zone of excellence to the zone of genius, and all that comes along with that. That's very interesting. So thank you so much for sharing those recommendations. The next question is centered around sort of inspiration for you as a founder, co-founder, sort of a serial entrepreneur. Sources of inspiration, you've already mentioned Erin Ireland, as well as the last question touched on where you draw some inspiration as well. But anything else that you want to touch on in terms of inspiration and what you search for in those moments?
Yeah, now that I'm in food, it's my first time being in the food industry, and it's been 2 years, but I'm just like so fascinated by female founders. So Jade has been on here previously, the founder of Yogu, and I love her product. If you haven't tried Yogu, it is an absolute must. And I love what she's done with her brand. And some like just other female founders in the space. So Sarah from Chewy's, she's using like upcycled fruit for sustainable fruit snacks, and Big Mountain Foods, like the mom and daughter duo at Big Mountain Foods. All of these women who are like trailblazing a very, very, very tough industry and doing it with like plant-based food, so that people like us, who I'm so impressed with people that have been like vegan for 25 years. I'm like, it was rough in 2008 when I started, it was like the classic like fries and salad, like story. And now it's like, I have a really funny story, because like before I'm not a big sweet person, but if I went to like a coffee shop or like a cafe and I saw like a vegan brownie, I was like, I have to buy this because it's like so rare. And so, you'd have a vegan brownie or a cookie every once in a while. And then I found myself like daily or like weekly, like buying goodies and treats, because it's just like everywhere I go now, there's so much vegan goodness. And so it's just like, it's so funny. I'm like, okay, I can't use that like excuse anymore, because it's like I can be enjoying like really good vegan food all the time. So but yeah, the female founders in this space I really look up to and really admire.
Absolutely. And so, like any of us, we're all here to connect and everything like that. So women founders, if you want to connect with Desiree, you can find her information in the show notes, and we'll talk about her at the end as well. She's open to collaborate, of course. And so our last question for you, Desiree, is centered around advice or wisdom, tips, tricks, however you want to frame it. Again, maybe somebody who is thinking of becoming a founder of the company that they've always had a passion about, or they're right in the thick of it. Anywhere along that sliding scale, we will say that you've already mentioned breaking things down into bite-sized accomplishments is, you already gave that, which is massive wisdom. But yeah, feel free to sort of let your heart out, or just speak to those who are going to be listening in terms of what you think they might find valuable. I don't want to frame that as any pressure.
Yeah, exactly. I think I like dropped it earlier in the podcast, so I wouldn't forget it. But really, that is like, I just probably have two main pieces of advice. One is like, take the first step, just start, like do something. What is the next step? And then usually that will lead you to the next thing and the next thing. It's like that again, like I always just love these pictures and like analogies, but it's like this, when you see the staircase, and it's just like, it's like one step at a time. So I just feel like, just start. If you have an idea, just start, just do something. What is the next step you can take? And then the other thing I was going to say is like, it's also like that funny thing of like meditation, and like people that are like, oh, I don't have time to meditate, and it's like, no, okay, well, you instead of 5 minutes you need an hour. Like those people that don't have time need like double the amount of time. And so I would definitely say like some sort of like mindfulness practice, because the best thing that I've done is really, I have really strong intuition, and I really know in my gut, like it's a physical feeling of when things are right and when opportunities present themselves, and if I should take it or not. And I attribute that to the fact that I'm like, I have a lot of mindfulness. I'm very present, and I'm very open to like receiving things. And so again, whether that's meditation, like 5-10 minutes quiet time in the morning or in the evening, gratitude journaling. I'm a big fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he says gratitude is the ultimate I should know this, but it's like the ultimate form of like reception. Like, if you want to create things, be grateful for what you already have. And so, yeah, I would just highly recommend starting somewhere. The first step, and creating space to connect with yourself and for mindfulness, so that the things that are right for you can come, and you will focus on the things that are right and not be banging your head against the wall trying to do something that isn't right, and listen to your body.
Very practical advice. We all get caught up thinking about, well, how to start. We all know where to start, so just doing that and then tacking on what you said, leading that decision by being grateful. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. I got it.
Exactly. So be grateful for where you're at, and then just go. And something that you've been doing throughout this conversation, you've been very just open and using humor and sort of being funny and storytelling, which is naturally what you're good at doing. But I think that's some other advice that you probably give some folks is lean into your stories, who you are, tell those things, and lean into humor, because it does have an ability to really connect folks. And you've done a wonderful job of that with all of us who are here listening to you today, and those who are going to be listening afterwards. So with everything that came up, is there any announcements or anything you want to mention before we can tell people where they can find you online?
I'm really grateful for this group, and for Justin, for you and Helen, who started this and spearheaded this. And then now with, well, at least it's been a while, over a year, I think Sandra has been spearheading this with you. And just super grateful for the opportunity, for the connections. And the other thing I was going to say,
All right. We will give it a few moments here. What a very interesting time to sort of have technical difficulties, which we've all experienced over the course of our professions. And so we'll wait for Desiree to come back in. And if not, we'll let people know where you can find out more about all the exciting things that are happening with Cascadia Seaweed and Kove Ocean Foods. You can find out more online, www.cascadia seaweed. It's just how you would think, cascadiaseaweed.com. Same on Instagram at Cascadia Seaweed. And Cove, hey, Desiree, you're back. Yes, please. You were just saying how you're grateful and you had your little outro.
oh yeah, I was just saying how I'm just feel very, very grateful and fortunate to be part of this group. I appreciate the fact that Justin and Helen, I don't know if I keep losing you because some people are freezing. Okay. I think you heard that part because I remember I see Sandra and she was nodding. Okay. Yeah. And then I don't know if you heard the part where I just said to really stay strong in your convictions, because I am someone who, I feel a bit uncomfortable when I make people feel uncomfortable about their choices. But I think for us to continue to push the needle and really help us create a more compassionate world, we need people that are standing up for the people, for the animals that can't stand up for themselves, for the planet that can't stand up for itself. And so I'm just really grateful for you, Justin, for all the things that you share every single day. Hopefully opening up people's eyes, to live more kindly. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And everybody lean into it. Everybody, the whole point of VEG Networking Canada is not about me. It's not about who started it. It's all about the people who are coming into this cool group of purpose-driven, impact-driven people and companies, and all the cool, exciting different industries that we're in, from food to law to all these different things, right? So www.cascadiaseaweed.com, on Instagram at Cascadia Seaweed, and the consumer food brand Cove, it's Cove with a K, coveocean.com, and the same on Instagram at Kove Ocean. Desiree, thank you so much for sharing more about your personal story and the company that you're involved with right now, companies that you're involved with doing exciting things right now. And everybody else, we'll catch you on another episode soon of VEG Networking Canada. Take care and bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.